When you say go after them, what do you mean?
Arrest them, imprison them for violating our Constitution.
I'm sorry, but what?
How do you do that?
Police are probably with us.
I mean, the police will be on the side of
the patriots. They sure will. They haven't been corrupted yet, as far as I know.
I mean, that's an actual civil war that you're talking about.
Oh, yeah.
You believe that the election was stolen in 2020?
Absolutely. It's plain on the nose of your face.
I mean, this behavior's not shocking when they've been listening to this 24/7.
So I return to my imperfect analogy from yesterday. We had a war over slavery. We knew slavery was inhumane and immoral, but somehow we couldn't solve slavery peacefully. It was an evil. But one side refused to acknowledge that it was evil because it was too big of an admission for them to make. Doesn't that feel that way now? That this defiant refusal to reverse this decline argues against the survival of a country. What does that leave you with? It leaves you with you need to make war to bring peace because you have a side that cannot change because then that means an admission that their beliefs have been corrupt all the time. So in a way, you have to force them to surrender.
Or we could make love, not war.
I tried that once.
Or we have an election.
I had to go to a doctor.
Right. Election.
Yeah.
And Republican politicians.
Everyone I talk to is sick and tired and fed up of being bullied by the left, abused by the left, and disrespected by the left. And our ideas, our policies, our ways of life have become so far apart that it's just coming to that point. And the last thing I ever want to see in America is a civil war. No one wants that. At least everyone I know would never want that. But it's going that direction, and we have to do something about it.
Really? She doesn't want civil war? That's funny, because back in February, she was calling for a national divorce to separate red states and blue states. It's almost as if she's made hypocrisy a pillar on her platform. Now, it's exhausting trying to reason and de-radicalize with these MAGA morons, especially when they're calling for a civil war. So that's why I've composed a list of 4 questions that you can ask your MAGA friend, neighbor, coworker, or family member the next time they start spouting off about, a civil war. And maybe by asking these questions, you can get them to start realizing how dumb they actually sound. The first question is, ask them, when and where did you come up with the idea for a civil war? Now this will prompt your MAGA respondent to say, I think independently and I do my own research. You know that's what they would say. But no, just double down and ask again. When and where did you come up with the idea for civil war? Asking them for specifics will make them start to realize that they're just repeating a talking point from their far right-wing media news source. And it might just get them to start thinking critically and independently. And maybe they kind of get it from clips like this.
Do you have concern for the country as I do?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think those who are conducting this travesty and creating this two-tier system of justice, I want to ask them, what the heck? Do you want us to be in civil war? Because that's what's going to happen. We're not going to keep putting up with this.
Another question you can ask is, where in the United States Constitution does it allow for the secession of a state? Or where does it allow for a state to declare civil war? Asking them for specifics will prompt them to go and look up the answer. But to their dismay, nothing in the United States Constitution grants a state the ability to secede from the Union or to declare civil war. And in fact, instead, they'll find the Supremacy Clause and the Necessary and Proper Clause, which both stipulate that the federal government's laws are superior to that of the states and that they can do anything necessary and proper to preserve the entire Union. So you're basically sending them on a wild goose chase, but it gets them to think critically and realize that they're stupid. A third question you can ask is, okay, well, how would the states be divided in a civil war? And who gets to divide them? Now, they'll likely respond saying, it's between the red states and the blue states. And you say, okay, what makes it a red state versus a blue state? In 2016, Pennsylvania went for Trump, a Republican politician, and in 2020 went for Joe Biden, a Democratic politician. And how would you separate out the red rural areas in blue states like California, or the big blue cities in red states like Houston or Austin in Texas. Instead of just laughing off these absurd claims, which they very much are, use this as kind of like a thinking moment, a teaching moment, like a toddler. Instead of just laughing at their question for how absurd or their statement for how absurd it is, actually get them to think critically and ask follow-up questions, get them to exit their emotional state and go into the logical state of their brain. A final question you can ask them is, okay, so if it's not a divide between the red states and the blue states, then who are the sides in this situation in the Civil War? Do you have Republicans and Democrats, neighbor to neighbor? Do we have LGBTQ people like me and straight people? Do we have it by race, black and white? What is the Civil War that you're talking about? Who is it between? They'll likely say it's between Democrat and Republican, and then you can ask them, well, how do you know if they're Democrat or Republican? Are you looking into their voting history? Are you just assuming that based on their appearance? And are you then judging them and then calling to have some sort of violent action taken against them for their beliefs? Isn't that kind of the same persecution that you, I guess, are claiming that you're the victim of? And then what differentiates that between the calling for mass violence towards anyone based off of a pre-existing condition? Like maybe the Holocaust, based on race or religion. Or maybe the Hutu or Tutsi war in Rwanda, the genocide, where they unalived one side because of their pre-existing condition. What would then excuse the United States from doing the same thing if Republicans were to claim they wanted a civil war? So what are they really calling for here? Look, MAGA doesn't realize the inflammation of their own words. They don't realize how emotionally charged they are and how much they dismiss logically when comparing and contrasting other situations and other sources. See, that's why it's important to ask these logical questions. It gets them to put their emotion aside, gets them to check their emotion, and it engages the logical parts of your brain. It stimulates those parts, and then they shift their focus. They actually reorient their thinking to actually realize how uninformed and dumb they actually sound. And that's why it's important to ask them these questions. So the next time that wild family member starts talking about, Civil War, just ask them some logical follow-up questions, and if they get angry about it, it kind of shows that cognitive dissonance coming out. But you can say that you did it, and it might get them to think a little bit differently. And also, my name is Scott Johnson. I'm still a little bit new to this channel, so please go and check out my content on YouTube and on TikTok. I'm a Southern political gay guy on both. They're both in the description box below. I appreciate and love you all, and I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day.